So today we have Scott talking to us about UX content and 5 uncomfortable truths about it, which we're very grateful to Scott for coming and talking to us about this. And Scott, at this point, I'm ready to hand over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Um, again, I'm Scott Kubie. I use he and him pronouns. I am based in Providence, Rhode Island, which is in New England of the United States, which I say to remind myself as much as anyone. I just moved here recently, so I don't have a strong internal geographic map of where I actually am in the world right now. But so happy to have you all joining from all of your various time zones and being part of this today. So as James said, oh, my cat might be joining. Come on, buddy. You want to be part of this? No? Just want to knock things off my desk? That's Mac. So this is 5 uncomfortable truths about UX content, which was the title I offered many months ago as part of my masterful plan to give myself room to talk about whatever was going to be on my mind today in October. So this is a brief presentation by design, as it says, offered in the hopes of fostering a lively Q&A session, which we can do in the chat. So I hope that or even after I finish this bit up, if folks have questions that they want to drop with their voice or in chat, we can do that. So a little bit about me, which I will offer by way of just kind of telling you where my perspective is coming from. I have been working on the content side of digital experiences for around 12 years now. And I started being part of conferences and speaking at events like these 10 years ago. I kind of cracked my teeth at the Information Architecture Summit. May it rest in peace, as it is reborn as the Information Architecture Conference now. And also some regional web conferences that were happening in the States, Mini WebCon, University of Illinois Web Conference, some others like that. So it's been a really interesting time to work in UX content over these past dozen years. I was very much relative to a lot of my content strategy peers, especially some of the more senior and seasoned practitioners, I'm kind of on the young side. And then relative to a lot of my new friends that I am making through conferences who are newly minted UX writers at tech companies, I feel like the oldest man in the room. So I'm kind of occupying this middle space, which has been really interesting. I was very much an indoor kid. I used bulletin board systems with a 9600 baud modem, dialing it up. I made websites with HTML4 and CSS1, Shockwave, Flash, Dreamweaver, all that good stuff. So I've been around for a little while, looking and thinking about how websites work, blogging before there were blogs. And so I've tried to take the long view when I talk about content. Professionally, my career is a little bit shorter than that whole long tail. And I first worked at an app startup that made that my job started right around the same time that the iOS, Apple's App Store launched. So this idea of like dedicated mobile apps on this kind of very constrained lockdown platform. The first one didn't have copy and paste. Do you remember this? The iPhone did not have copy and paste. It's a wild time. So designing apps for a really constrained environment. And I sort of slid in the back door with some folks that needed some writing help for press releases, app store descriptions, all that kind of stuff, and then realized that, hey, there's also words inside of these applications as well. So we had a few of our own apps that we were making. We also did some kind of boutique client work for banking applications, the breaking news app, which was a big cultural moment with Twitter, first million follower account, if I'm remembering correctly. So we did an app for them and some other projects. So I actually started as a user interface writer, as a UX writer, which is pretty much backwards for how a lot of people's careers have gone. And then I took a full-time job at a company called Wolfram Research, which makes Wolfram Alpha, Mathematica, and lots of technical computing software. So that was very much the opposite, at least in software land, of this app startup, because they made legacy software that still shipped in boxes. And we're going through this moment of transitioning from delivery used to mean delivery, like the software got delivered. I'm sure many of you remember that. The younger folks are like, what is he talking about? But yeah, no, the software was in boxes. And the technical writers wrote the things that got printed in the manual, sometimes a very thick manual that you could use to elevate your monitor. So I worked there as that company was transitioning to cloud-based software, delivering things online, multi-channel, all that sort of thing. And then bounced around a few other places. Most notably, I then later in my career took a job at an agency called Brain Traffic. If anyone is familiar with Christina Halverson, who wrote content strategy for the web, I worked under her. I worked under Megan Casey, who wrote the content strategy toolkit. And I did consulting contract projects for a lot of typically large institutions, so Fortune 500 companies, healthcare, government, higher ed, et cetera. So again, share all of that by way of saying, look at all these jobs I've had. Not that I learned and became some amazing expert through those jobs, but I actually think from doing a lot of public speaking and also making myself a very publicly available person. At this point in my career, I've had hundreds, maybe 1,000 or more conversations in hallways, at lunch tables, through my open office hours with people about UX content, trying to navigate jobs and roles and all these things. So as I alluded to, I have distilled 12 years of that into 5 things that I just feel like are important to say at this moment of where we're at in this broad field of UX content. And so I'm gonna stop waffling, that's the term of the day. So I'll stop waffling and get into them. So the first one is right on the tin, which is that it's all UX content. I have talked to and worked with a lot of teams that are struggling with things like designing workflows, so efficient workflows to get the content produced and published. I talk to a lot of individual practitioners, individual contributors who are feeling like they're getting requests from all corners of the organization to write different kinds of things, sometimes in a minimizing way, like, you're the writer, so why can't you help us with this thing? It's writing. And I get teams that are trying to break away, their words, not mine, often trying to break away from the framing of being a technical content team or from being a marketing team, and saying things like, well, we don't just write marketing content, or we're not the marketing writers. And I understand the impulse to position oneself as a UX professional or as a content designer in this content design vertical and job ladder. And one big reason for that is that it often means more money. I've said before that the difference between a content strategist on a UX team and the content strategist on a marketing team is about $40,000 a year. So the jobs and work can be the same, but sometimes the compensation is different. I want to set that aside for a moment. That's an important thing in anyone's individual journey. When it comes to how we organize these teams, where I think a lot of folks really go wrong, is that they try to carve up, I would argue, arbitrary lanes of content so that we can like neatly divide responsibilities by category. And so we'll say, okay, if it's product content, this team's in charge. Our product designers and content designers are on it. Is this marketing content? Great, then the marketing team is in charge. Is this support content? You get the idea. I've also, in these same organizations, never seen teams that can clearly tell me when we're looking at a piece of content, which it is. And that's because it is all UX content. If the user experience is the sum total of the experience, the takeaway feeling that an individual user has from using our stuff, then it's all UX content, including and especially, and this is maybe the hottest part of this little hot take, the marketing content. I think we need UX professionals steering marketing content. I think we need to bring marketing people closer and deeper into our processes, because the marketing frames the experience. It tells people what kind of experience they are about to have. And if you frame an experience incorrectly, everybody's going to have a bad time. If you tell someone that you want to go for a long walk, they might wear their walking shoes, but they might not bring their hiking boots and their camelback if what you're actually doing is taking a long walk up a long peak. And so, how that experience has been framed can contribute in a big way to the quality of that experience. So, first uncomfortable truth is that it is all UX content. I encourage people to divide, excuse me, divide the work more by role and responsibility. Job titles aside, focus on the roles, focus on the function that the content provides in the experience. And then no one wants to do this. They want it to be simple. They want it to be systems and rules based. But you actually have to look at each project that you're taking on, think about the content that's in it, and then make a plan for how you're going to produce it and manage it. This is why we still need content strategy on top of whatever delightful new disciplines are emerging now, is we have to plan our content production. So that's number one. It's all UX content. Number two, someone has to do the writing. I think we all know this, especially in this community. Many of us identify as writers, have writers on their job titles. This is uncomfortable, I think, maybe at the organizational level. A lot of teams, and this is kind of the old school way of doing it, if you will, especially in UX design land. You will see organizations, many of you have probably experienced this, do basically whatever they can to do as much design work as possible before any writing takes place. They'll just push and iterate and draw and wireframe and lorem ipsum and keep going without ever having a conversation about who's going to do the writing. So it's uncomfortable for this is an uncomfortable truth for our design friends, is that if you have content, it gets written. The person who does that is a writer. Someone has to do the writing. That could be uncomfortable because they don't have writers, because writing isn't a comfortable skill for them. It's not something they feel experienced with. This is also an uncomfortable truth if, done, buddy? All right. He's heard enough. It's also an uncomfortable truth if you are trying to top-down content expertise control all of your content. Because I have yet to find an organization that tells me they have enough writers. I've yet to find an organization that tells me they have enough writers. So someone's going to have to do it, and someone's going to have to do it potentially at different levels of fidelity. And again, oh no, we might have to design a process where someone writes maybe an initial draft to get the idea across, and then someone's going to do development editing on that draft. I'm talking even for interface content here, not just for long form stuff. Someone's got to get it started. Someone's got to carry it further up the hill. Someone's got to do the fit and finish work, polish it, sign off on it, and so on. But ultimately, someone does have to do that writing work. And very often that person is going to be someone that might not be comfortable writer. And very often that person themselves, in their own mental cosmology, is not comfortable thinking of themselves as a writer. So this is something that we have to plan for as an organization. And I'm encouraging folks to take this as mantra, if you will, that someone has to do the writing, and start saying this in meetings when we are planning stuff, so that we can address it early instead of everything turning into a content emergency. More on how to address this next in some of these other truths. This one is on the career coaching personal level. I do a lot of that in my job now, which is you might need a new job title. I got invited to this through my friend Charlotte, who is involved a lot in kind of the technical writing community, because I had posted some saucy tweets about how I was asking if anyone had ever met a technical writer with a sense of humor. I'm sure you're all lovely people that have lovely senses of humor, but I will tell you, because I'm trying to be real with you all, if someone is being miserable in my mentions online about how we've invented all this stuff before and there's nothing new and what do all these content strategy and content design kids think they're doing, that person will be a content design, will be a technical writer. The miserable person in my mentions is always a technical writer. And I'm sympathetic, right? Someone comes along, they've got a new job title, they're making 10, 20, 30% more than you in your traditional role. You feel like you have been saying for years, maybe decades now, that the technical writers and the technical content and support team should and is qualified to help with the product content. You should let us in there. We can help. We can make this better. We wouldn't have to write such convoluted support and documentation if we could optimize the process, if we could influence the designs. Yes, yes, yes. It sucks. It has sucked. Well, you know who figured out how to make it stop sucking less is the people who learned to frame what they're doing as design work. And many of them call themselves content designers. And they are now getting embedded on product teams and getting to do exactly what the sad sacks in my mentions have been complaining that they wanted to do for decades. So you tell me, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? If you want to be effective, you might need a new job title or at least a new framing on your work and the work that you do. I see in the broad UX content universe, I think that technical writing is certainly, especially like support and documentation writing, is a very discrete skill set. I am aware of this. That's not a skill that I have a lot of expertise on. The same with scientific and technical communication, of just being able to take, whether it is data and results or whether it is complex scientific concepts and communicating them in more human and plain language, whatever your approach is, whatever your relationship is to this broad area of the content world, it is a discrete skill set that you will need to deploy in doing your work. As a for instance, I feel similarly about information architecture. It's a very wonky, very deep, very nerdy craft that is very necessary in a lot of the work that I do. And I do not sell myself as an information architect, even though that's a lot of what I do for teams, because it just doesn't land in the same way. I talk to them about design, I talk to them about strategy and operations, I talk to them about solving problems. So it's worth thinking about. You can be sad that things have moved on, or you can try and jump in the stream, find a way to move at the river's pace. And think about, is there a new title, new way of talking about oneself that might be a better fit, that might resonate more and get you the results that you want? I have to watch these type themselves out because I don't have my preview. Rules don't make writer. 4, I think we're on 4 now. So rules don't make writers. This is kind of related to that earlier uncomfortable truth of someone has to do the writing, about scaling, about how we operationalize our craft. And I think that this idea that rules don't make writers is an uncomfortable truth for a lot of content design leaders now. I've talked to a lot of them, and they're finding success. The product teams like having content people broadly embedded on the teams. There's someone to tackle all of the word problems for all of the stuff that they're shipping and iterating, and it's really, really nice. And we don't have enough of them. It's hard to hire all the people to do that work. They may not be able to do it at the level of competency that we would like them to have, and we need to scale this up. So how are we going to scale our content design practice? We are going to make some rules. We're going to make a style guide, and we're going to socialize that style guide. And we are going to centralize some best practices, and we're going to write down all of the ways and all of the rules about our whether we use Oxford or serial commas, and about whether we use British or English, American English spellings. All of these things, we're going to centralize them. And I'll tell you, this does not have the effect that a lot of organizations would want, which is to find that suddenly all of the many people in the organization who don't have the benefit of a technical writer or content designer on their team still have to write things to get their job done. The marketing team still has to write ad copy. The product team might still be writing their onboarding copy. Engineers might still be writing strings because, as we said, someone has to do the writing. Those folks, you can point them, you can bring a horse to water, can't make them drink. You can tell people where the rules are, you can't make them follow them. And it's not because they don't want to do a good job. And it's not because they don't want to follow the rules. It's because the way that you communicate about this kind of stuff does not resonate with people. If looking up the rules of grammar and style and usage and then following those rules worked, they actually wouldn't need you because a lot of your rules are just borrowed from Strunk and White anyway. So if looking stuff up of like what's the right way to do it, or the Yahoo style guide, if we want to talk about interface copy, all of this is documented already. All the rules are out there. You might have some quirks in your organization, but the rules of interface writing, the rules of content and design, these things exist. It's not helping people become better writers because it is a deep, difficult intellectual craft. What is the answer? The answer in part is, and one I'm a big fan of advocating for, in part because it is my living, is training. We need to train people at a minimum, and no, a presentation about the style guide is not a training per se. You got to get them writing in the room. So training people on these things, yes, making tools and office hours support available to them. Doesn't have to be an office hours model, but just the idea of like create space for people to help each other with these kinds of things. There are many, many levels beyond the style guide. That is not the top of the summit for operationalizing a content design craft. It is in fact just the beginning. One more for us today. Design solutions create content problems. So yes, it is an exciting moment in UX content. As I've said, we are getting more people working, more people with a writerly background, if you will, working on content, writing things, being part of product design teams. And I'm seeing, I don't know if anyone else followed this with the curiosity that I did, but there was this rash of articles, especially like a year ago, going back maybe 2 or 3 years, about all these teams that were, Meta / Facebook was one of them. There were several others. Actually, MailChimp Intuit did it after I left, talking about how they have pivoted or rebranded their practice from content strategy to content design. So they decided that content design is the framing that worked and that this embedded distributed model of content designers on product teams was the way forward. Who needs all that wonky content strategy business? We are content designers, gosh darn it. The problem is, in part, that all of the stuff that a content designer is working on. So let's just say it is a new feature in a simple application. You have an email marketing app. That's what I was working on most recently, right? You got an email marketing app and there's a new automations feature and you've got a content designer embedded on that team. So all the little widgets, all the notifications, all the configuration screens were attended to by a content designer. So they're really good. And the app is that new feature really usable. It's easy to understand. It's easy to document, right? It's even easy to create the documentation around it because someone with the right kind of thinking cap on helped shape the terminology and labels around all of this. So great, problem solved, right? Well, no, you all know that that's not problem solved. We designed a new thing and we shipped a new thing, which means there are umpteen new content problems in the organization. Has anyone looked at all of our content about how to send automated emails that existed before? Because we've probably talked about it. There were probably, if it's a new feature that we built, people probably had solutions, custom solutions previously. So maybe they were using Zapier or something. All right, where's all of our content around Zapier? Is that changing? Is that going away? What do we need to say about it? Are our customer service people prepared with scripts and information to talk about how the new feature works if automations fire at the wrong time? You can probably all imagine your own content problems that come from a new design solution. So it feels weird to me as a content strategist that I even have to share this truth, but I find it something that I have to tell teams a lot, is that if you had your ideal ratio and headcount, if you had 100 UX designers and 100 content designers, one-to-one embedded everywhere, you're still going to need more content people on top of that. You're going to need lots of content people on top of that. You're going to need content design and content strategy skills on your support teams, on your onboarding teams, on your in-house content, and so on. So just a reminder and a plea, I guess, as if you're part of an organization that is shifting to content design, embracing it wholeheartedly, that is lovely. Please still also hire content strategists. Thank you. So those are the 5 for the moment. It's all UX content. The distinctions don't matter to our customers. They do not know if they're looking at product or marketing or interface or support content. Rules don't make writers, and someone has to do that writing. If you are trying to create more impact in your organization and no one is listening to you as a marketing writer or a technical writer, that sucks, and I am sorry. And there is something you can do about it, which is thinking about the framing of your work. And please remember that all these lovely content designery things that we are content designing can still create other types of content problems. So there's plenty of room for support specialists and content strategists and all the rest. That's all I got in the presentation, folks. I'm going to let James take back over the screen here. I'm excited for questions, so I'll open my chat back up here if folks want to fire off questions in the chat, and we can kind of take it from there.
Thanks very much, Scott. Really appreciate you coming and speaking with us today. I had forgotten, Charlotte had warned me you'd had some hot takes on Twitter, and I had forgotten about those. So it was a lovely awakening moment to hear those again. But yeah, some really great stuff. I just wanted to take this moment whilst I'm still recording to just share a little bit of information for everyone here and for the video. It's just to let you guys know that the ISTC does a podcast each month, and we interview various people. So again, it's a similar kind of idea to ISTC Meets, where we have interesting people from across this very wide profession. We've had it's all UX content, and from our point of view, it's all technical communication. And we'd love you guys to have a look at that and check that out at the URL there. And just to let you guys know, we have another ISTC Meets next month where we're meeting Tanner Franco, going to be talking about Tales from an Agile Content Ops Frontier. You can check out on Eventbrite, and all the things can be accessed via our website, the URL there at the bottom of the screen. So please do have a look, and if that's interesting, it'd be great to see you again next month.